Celebrating 4 years of the Retirement Cafe podcast. What makes for a successful retirement? Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast with me, your host, Justin King. If you're thinking about your retirement or already retired, you're in the right place. My aim is to help you plan for and live a successful and meaningful retirement. Retirement is far more than just a financial event. It's a significant life event, a major transition, which will bring with it new challenges and opportunities. So each episode contains tips, information, and inspiration to help you feel more informed and confident about your retirement. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello and welcome to my podcast on our 4th year anniversary. It's great to have you here. As the 4-year anniversary of the podcast launch was approaching, I got to thinking about what I've learned from the dozens of wonderful guests I've had the pleasure to chat with, and decided to collate a summary of what to me seems to be the most things that make the most successful retirement. Looking back over the conversations I've had, there are some clear themes that come up time and time again. So I plan to summarize those today and perhaps reference specific episodes where these themes are discussed the most. I'm bringing Kathy in for this episode so that it's more of a conversation rather than me just doing a monologue. So without further ado, here we go with episode 163 to mark 4 years of the Retirement Cafe podcast. Welcome back, Kathy.
Hello, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me, I suppose. So today we've got 9 themes to run through that make up for what you believe is a successful retirement from all the episodes you've recorded over the last few years, and they've been arranged into what feels like a kind of a chronological or maybe just logical order, really. And these themes, they fall into 3 brackets, which are purpose, planning, and looking after yourself. So let's just dive straight in with the first of those 9 individual themes, and that's what we've called redefining retirement. And I think you'd agree this is like a really strong theme that runs through so many of the episodes. So maybe you could just tell us in your own words what you think this is all about.
Well, as we know, retirement today, it's no longer like it was for our grandparents. You know, everything has changed, hasn't it? Everything has shifted. Our longevity, our lifestyles, the whole thing. You know, the conversation I had with Professor Andrew J. Scott in episode 100 provides the foundation of this theme. His groundbreaking and best-selling book, I highly recommend it. The 100-Year Life book explains how we're living longer. So we need to think about all stages of our lives differently, but none more so than the traditional retirement period. I chatted with Professor Scott about how our growing longevity is perhaps one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century, but have we yet seized all the opportunities our longer lives offer us?
Yes, I think that's true. There's a lot of negative talk, isn't there, about older people being a burden on society. So what did Professor Scott have to say about that?
Well, he believes we have a huge amount of control over our health and well-being in our later years. And I completely agree. He talks about a mindset malleability, thinking differently and more positively about later life, and challenging ageist stereotypes that continue to prevail. You know, many of my guests have discussed challenging aging stereotypes, most recently photographer Laura Page with her project Hidden Depths of the Over 80s. Check out episode 161 if you missed it. It's well worth a listen. Ultimately, this is about redefining our expectations of retirement and taking action to live the kind of retirement that's really fulfilling.
Oh, this really is such a great and key important theme to start on. So are there other guests you've collaborated with or who have elaborated on the point of redefining retirement?
Well, obviously, Professor Samir Gray springs to mind, as he hates the word retirement, preferring the word renaissance to describe this period of life. And Samir Gray's in his mid-70s himself and still working for the NHS in various roles to drive the message home of how to live longer, better. He's been on the podcast twice, first in episode 51 and then in episode 156. Muir's approach to viewing aging is view aging as about all life, not just the end of life. His books Sod 60 and Sod 70 sum up his attitude towards aging. There are other guests who've also talked about their own personal approach or initiatives that they've developed to help all of us redefine retirement. So I'll put links to their episodes in the show notes, as we don't have time to talk through them all today. Briefly, this includes people redefining the role of work in your later years, where you might choose to live, as well as how you might like to live. In a nutshell, it's about looking and thinking differently about all aspects of this stage of life.
Great. So accepting and embracing that retirement has changed beyond recognition is the first insight. So what's up next?
Well, having a purpose, and the word purpose gets spouted out a huge amount, but what I observe from working with dozens of people transitioning into retirement is that those who retire to something seem to have a much more successful retirement than those who simply retire from something. Some people live their entire lives with purpose, but I find that many people end up getting too busy with work and family life to truly question their own purpose and what will make them truly fulfilled. When retirement hits, it can be a slap in the face for some people who finally have the time to confront what really makes them tick. It's far from easy, and there can be financial implications, of course, which is one of the reasons many people put off having the conversation in their younger years. There's the mortgage to pay, right? There's all those kind of financial constraints. My conversation with George Kinder in episode 38 that were about the financial life planning approach that I use with my clients to help them really kind of consider, first of all, their own mortality, and to make sure that this between the time from now and the time of their eventual mortality is really, truly fulfilling and purposeful. It get all the things that they wanted to achieve in their life. Now they have possibly the financial means, but also the time to achieve. I want to sprinkle the magic fairy dust on their lives and make sure that we've got no stone is unturned of things that they've maybe kept quiet, maybe not expressed to the world. Often it's things in the community, it's entrepreneurship, it's arts, it's music, it's travel, it's family. There's so many things that people have maybe just kind of kept to themselves a little bit and gone, I haven't had time, or I've got too many commitments to be able to attend to that. This is now their opportunity.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know you've chatted with some really inspiring people, haven't you, doing inspirational things in their retirement. One that springs to mind is Mark and S digging wells or helping to fund the digging of wells or raise money to the digging of wells, I should say, in Africa, episode 74. But for some people, continuing to work is what gives them purpose, right?
Yeah. And I think, that's a really good thing. And actually, of course, the work that they often take on, it doesn't necessarily to be about financial rewards. Though for some people it still is. Some people start new businesses in their kind of that second stage or third stage of life. Stuart Lewis talked from Restless, talked about non-exec directorships. Victoria Tomlinson helping the over 50s find age-friendly employers. Victoria calls this a transition to unretirement. So whatever your purpose is, tap into it and make sure it's a central part of your retirement plan.
That's great. And I think that second one feeds really nicely into the third insight about what makes for a successful retirement, which is, which you've labelled it's never too late. So it might be obvious, this one, but maybe tell us where your thinking comes from.
Well, I suppose we've got vitality, we've got longevity, and, the story of I can't remember the chap's name now, the guy who started Walmart in America, he started in his 50s. there's so many people have done really inspiring things in those what's deemed to be these retirement years. And actually, of course, they're building upon the success that they from the experiences of their lives, and now they can kind of launch into the world to do something really differently. But of course, they're doing that with all the years of experience they've already got under their belts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, I know you say often that people that you work with, they sometimes need permission to go ahead and do some of these things in later life, whether it's about spending the money or whether it's more generally about doing something that maybe feel a bit extravagant, or people might think that's a bit strange. Why are you doing that? Where's that come from, do you think?
Well, again, I mean, you've also got to think about the generation that we're dealing with. Maybe that is shifting, but the baby boomers of today have often been real savers. They've really put money aside, and they either grew up or in an environment maybe when things weren't. People weren't so confident with money, or there wasn't so much money around. So therefore, they worry about being extravagant. They worry about the generation to come if they've got family and younger family and grandchildren, and they worry about how they're going to pay for that maybe university education, how they're going to get onto housing ladders. So they're kind of worried about that next generation, and then they're trying to also work out, well, what is it okay for us to spend? And people don't like, generally the people we're dealing with so often, that they don't seem to be massively extravagant. So it is actually about kind of maybe encouraging them sometimes to go, it's okay, it's okay to go and do this stuff. But it's not all about money. So many times it's just the permission to go and have a go at doing something different and something new, and giving people a bit of encouragement to do that.
Absolutely. And I know you've interviewed some really interesting people, haven't you? So the Iron Gran, for example, being, I think, the first over 70 to do an Ironman distance triathlon, and, some other people that have done some great things much later in life than you might normally see people taking on those kind of challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Iron Gran was quite amazing, I mean, flipping heck, we've done Ironman distances ourselves, well, once, and I'm not intending to do it again, and I don't know how much she'd done numerous long distance triathlons, and I take my hat off to her. Quite amazing. So check out that episode 26, I think, for Iron Gran. Starting your own business. Check out Suzanne Noble's episodes for doing that. Retraining. To become teacher. I think that's episode 150. There's so many opportunities to do something new. Ultimately, this is often about getting out of your comfort zone and being brave to do something different. Enjoy the gift of a longer, more hopeful and healthier life.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've challenged the definition of what retirement means. We've established your purpose and decided that it's never too late to embark on a lifelong passion. What else makes for a successful retirement? What are some of the other factors? Well,
I think this is when we need to start talking about the brain and understanding how it ages. I often talk about a ski slope. When I've got clients in front of me and I'm talking about, let's say they're in their early 60s, and let's hopefully that they're relatively fit and have full vitality. Except, of course, we all know that, by the time you get to that age, I mean, we're in our, well, I am, you're obviously not, but I'm already in my 50s and already feeling a few aches and pains. And I kind of give the analogy, if you've ever been a skier, you start off on a green slope, which is a very kind of gentle, benign slope just to slide gently down, and beginners can start there to get their ski legs. And then you progress to a blue slope, which is often kind of nice, big, wide open mountainside, so you can gently slide from one side to the other. And then if you get a bit more progressive, you get to the red slope, which is a bit more aggressive and it's going downhill a bit faster. And then eventually you end up in blacks and maybe off-piste and in mogul fields. And I kind of think that maybe as we age, it's maybe in our 40s and 50s, we're on that green slope. And as we get into our 60s, we may be on that blue slope. And then maybe in the 70s and 80s, we're into the reds. And then maybe if we get there, God willing, that 90s, we're on that black slope, because we do know we're going to slide off the side of the mountain anytime soon. So, whilst we've got our health, let's do stuff, because we do know there is an inevitable decline of our physical capability and also our mental capacity to take on new things, to do new stuff. So yeah, that's really where that that analogy it comes from, I suppose. So it's what can we do to enhance our lives as we get older?
I remember one of the most insightful was with neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Levitin, wasn't it? Episode 118, where he explained basically what happens to the brain, didn't he, as we age, which was kind of quite interesting, and the importance of keeping it engaged ultimately.
Yeah. So, different people that we've worked with have had very different experiences of retirement. So one of our clients, Mike, he was a successful businessman, floated his company on the UK stock exchange. But when he left his business, he became a non-exec director. He became a trustee of the school that he went to, and he got involved in charity work. And this continual kind of mixture of experiences, I suppose, that he could put his energies into, I'm absolutely positive kept him current, kept him, just kept him with the world, really. He didn't retire only possibly to the golf course. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that I think that when I look at people who have what I view as, a really thriving retirement, it's not all about golf and cruises. The people who just leave their business and that's it, and they literally move out. They walk out, they lock the door, and they walk away. I'm not convinced after a few years that they're quite having such a fulfilling time. My old boss Martin, he who employed me at a very early age. He's still working. He's in his mid-80s. He still runs an insurance brokerage. He goes in early in the morning and he finishes at lunchtime. And he's still absolutely engaged with his business and his staff. So, again, is he retired? He has quite a few holidays a year. He can afford to do so. But I just think he's having a fulfilling life. He's keeping his brain active, engaged in the real world. I think also the people who I see studying a lot, they're continually curious about the world. They're either learning maybe a musical instrument, or they're involved in a hobby that is particularly is taxing their brain a little bit, and they're continually kind of discovering stuff. They appear to be, again, the brains are staying active. I mean, who knows of whether that's staying off any dimension or anything like that. I don't know. But again, I'm looking at them and going, you're curious about the world, you're learning about the world, and you're very much partaking in it.
And I think actually Dr. Daniel Levitin did say there's evidence now, isn't there? There is data to show that learning something new, not just keeping going with the same thing, like you were referring to with the Sudoku puzzle, that's great, but do something different the next week and do something different again the next week.
Yeah. And Dr. Ben Webb, which was episode 159, shared his 6 pillars of a healthy brain. So if you missed that, I really do encourage you to take a listen to that. The data is incredible. Eating a Mediterranean diet high in leafy green veg and reduces your risk of mental decline by 30%. That really is outstanding. And of course, a daily vigorous walk for 20 to 30 minutes can have the same effect. So the message here is to take time to understand what's happening to your brain and your body. And there is a host of conversations you can listen to on that topic.
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot, so we'll put links in the show notes, and that leads us nicely on to number 5, which we've touched on a little already. But that's really about now taking control of your health and well-being, isn't it? You've understood what's going on, so now you know what's going on. Do something about it.
Yeah. Well, the key message here is that we've got, significant opportunity to control our health and our mental decline. The one big thing that I've learned over the last couple of years or the last 4 years of doing these episodes and reading around the subject of longevity and retirement and aging, in essence, is I'm a fan of resistance or weight training. And this comes up as a fundamental way of taking control of our physical health. The data, again, is convincing around the loss of muscle mass as you age, especially for women post-menopause. And cardio exercise like running or walking is fantastic, but it's not enough on its own when it comes to staying strong. The risk of falls and their implications increase dramatically as we age. And building physical strength in the muscles is such an important step to slow down the slide into frailty. And that's what can end up being our downfall. No pun intended, of course. We all know someone elderly who's taken a tumble. And of course, what happens next is often the result of their strength. If you're stronger, you can stay out of hospital. If you're not, then hospital admission following a fall can have some terrible outcomes. The real key message here, I think, around this staying strong is that it doesn't maybe prevent you having a fall, but if you end up in hospital, at least you're going in strong. And then, because if you end up on a hospital bed for a number of weeks, maybe your muscle strength is going to disappear really, really quickly. Because you're not exercising, you're lying down all the time. So the real key is we can't stop you getting into hospital. I mean, maybe staying strong might stop you getting into hospital, but if you do go in strong. So you've got a good chance of coming out the other side and being able to, if it's a new hip that you need or it's something else like that, you've got some strength to stay fit in the future. If you tune into Chris Tilley's episode 147, he says you're never too old to lift.
So this success factor, around what helps you to have a successful retirement, it's also about keeping moving generally, isn't it? And I think also importantly, having a social support network whilst you're doing so has proven to be really, really important as well.
Yeah, of course. If you can intertwine your exercise regime, whether it's lifting weights or it's running or what have you, with other people, then of course you're kind of getting double bubble there. You really are getting the benefit of community as well as exercise. I love my conversation with Nicole Morelli, who set up the Menopausal Mermaids, which is a sea swimming group for ladies of a certain age and a stage of life. That we chatted about. That was episode 90. But it may be that it's Tai Chi or fitness classes are the right thing for you. Just doing something. Keeping fit and active socially can have a significant impact upon your feeling of connectedness. As we know, that feeling of isolation can have a significant impact upon your physical as well as your mental health. As obviously Dame Esther Ranson explained in our conversation in episode 68. Dame Esther founded the Silverline charity, which is specifically there to tackle isolation for the older generation, and it's been in great demand. Obviously, you can't always control the direction your health will take, as Kevin Weber found out when diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. But even Kevin found that keeping fit and active played a significant role in his ability to cope with his cancer. And he's still here a few years post-diagnosis, running ultramarathons and raising a huge amounts of cash for charity. My conversation with Kevin, also known as Dead Man Running, was a really quite an emotional one. So you might want to tune into that. That's episode 142.
Great. Fantastic. And so the next insight is called the Big D. That's up next. That's the sixth factor for successful retirement, which is about feeling equipped to prevent as far as we can and to deal with a dementia diagnosis.
Yeah, and this is an important topic because dementia is probably the most feared disease of later life. Some of the conversations I had with guests like Dr. Ben Hicks from Bournemouth University as early on as episode 5, Mary Jordan and then Grace Meadows from Music for Dementia in episode 138 made me realise a huge amount of work is going into not only the prevention but helping people to live better with dementia.
Yeah, that's really encouraging, isn't it? I mean, for me, I think the thought of a dementia diagnosis makes me feel really quite vulnerable.
Yeah. But, there are steps you can take to protect yourself as much as possible and, of course, protect your loved ones, to which I discussed with solicitor Holly Mieville-Hawkins and Fiona Heald around powers of attorney and mental capacity. So understanding how these work is key. If it was up to me, I would make it compulsory to put a power of attorney in place when you turn 18.
Absolutely. It seems an absolute no-brainer, really, doesn't it? And it's so simple to do. So that's the other side to that. Okay, so let's now move on to the final 3 factors of a successful retirement from your 4 years of podcast episodes. And these 3 come under the planning heading. So what's up first?
Well, obviously, this is my day job. It's my area of expertise, planning for a 30-year retirement. Now, I know from experience that to live the retirement that you really want, regardless of what life throws at you, you need to understand what your wealth can provide for you and your family into retirement and beyond. And as we live longer, the risk of you outliving your money instead of your money outliving you becomes much greater.
So why the 30 years?
So if we've got a couple, we'll have a male and female couple, and they're 62. The life expectancy of that couple, i.e. one of you still to be alive, there's 50% chance of one of you still being alive in your 90s. So that's pretty significant. And of course, we know that for a couple, your expenditure doesn't halve when one of you goes. In fact, your income may halve because, of course, you're going to lose a state pension possibly, and maybe some other pensions also if they are kind of defined benefit or final salary schemes, or you may only get 50% of the benefits of them. So there may be a drop in income, but not a drop in specifically in expenditure.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So what's so important about the planning part and, planning for a 30-year retirement, and what needs to be in that plan?
Well, of course, hugely topical at the moment is the risk of inflation eroding the real value of your money. I mean, as we know, 10% inflation, your £100 you've got in your pocket today is worth £90 when you take it to the supermarket in 12 months' time. That's huge. And and of course, if inflation remains at this level, then it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. The interest rates on cash savings accounts are starting to rise, but they're not getting anywhere near inflation. If you're willing to lock your money away for a fixed period of time, you might get 4%, but that's going to leave a gap of 6%. Over time, what you're able to buy with your hard-earned cash will reduce significantly. So you need to plan to how to manage your assets to be able to afford the retirement you really want for now and, of course, in the future.
So what should people do?
Well, what we do for people, and you can do this yourself. I mean, it's not a problem. You can get yourself a, Excel spreadsheet or something like that. But we've got software to do it. We're a lifetime cash flow forecast. I talk about this in episode 114. We map out what someone's income and assets can provide throughout their retirement. And then, of course, there are all the other factors that going in and planning a 30-year retirement, including, your estate and legacy planning, all of which would be covered off by a good financial planner. The next key factor for a successful retirement, of course, quite possibly is investing.
So tell me more about that.
Well, the figure I quoted about inflation, that's the number one reason probably to invest is how we're trying to get our assets to grow alongside that inflation figure. I chatted to some real eminent experts in this field, including David Jones of Dimensional Fund Advisors, twice, in fact, episode 34 and 35, as well as Elroy Dimpson in episode 25, about what long-term investors should consider specifically for retirees. I got insight from Neil Beige, Robin Powell, and Greg Tavis.
So a whole host of real experts in this field then. And so what did you conclude from one of those conversations?
Well, invest in assets that are likely to grow. That's the key thing. And in our experience, a global equity portfolio, investing in the well-run companies of the world over the long term historically has proven to beat inflation over the long period. Making sure, of course, that you've got some cash reserves or some guaranteed income to see you through periods where maybe the equity or the stock market returns aren't going in your favor.
Absolutely. And then keep your costs nice and low.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so finally we come to the ninth factor for successful retirement. Tell me, what is it?
This is a challenging one for many people to face, but it's important to do so if you're to be able to make the most of your later life. Otherwise, your fears can continue to play on your mind and you won't truly enjoy life. And it's knowing how to navigate the care system and deal with that period of your life right towards the end of your life. It might sound a bit grim, but the UK care system is complex and challenging. So having a plan in place for choosing the care you or a family member might need and knowing how you'll fund it can relieve a huge amount of stress when that time actually comes. Of course, if it comes, but if it comes and you've got a plan, I think that's helpful for everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that, social and healthcare seem to be topics, should we say, that no government of the day has really got a handle on, in terms of having a comprehensive, clear plan of action as to how they're going to deal with and support and fund level of care that's going to be needed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's challenging, and most of us don't want to end up in a local authority care home. So it's important to take time to do your research, get help where you need it, create your own plan. One of the best interviews I had on this topic, as with the incredibly well-informed Jacqueline Berry, who's the founder of My Care Consultant. Check out episode 40. Her company does an incredible job of providing free initial guidance on a 15-minute phone call to anyone looking to be pointed in the right direction about their loved one's care. You can then pay for an additional bespoke advice if you need it. And, I think what My Care Consultant is doing is so helpful that I point all of our clients towards their helpline, and we pay for any personalized guidance my clients might need.
Yes, it sounds like a great starting place for people looking to navigate the care system for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've created a series of videos which you'll find on my YouTube channel, which is you can find if you go to YouTube and just search for the @Justin_King, where you can watch those. They're there to try to answer the most common questions about finding and funding care. So that might be worth a look if you have specific concerns now.
Yes, great. And I think care is one of those topics we'll continue to focus on the podcast in coming weeks and months as well. And so the second part of this final success factor is also about planning for your ultimate demise.
Yes. Now, the expert I spoke to for the podcast over the past 4 years spoke of the need to share what you want with loved ones, write it down, be open to ease that transition for everyone involved, and have a peaceful end of life. Doula Judy Kaufman shared her experience of doing this role in episode 66. You can also plan by making sure you've got the right documentation in place. Of course, a will, but also consider a living will, as explained by Sarah Malik of Compassion in Dying. This comes back to planning as far as possible, but ultimately at some stage we all have to deal with grief. So you may wish to tune into Amy Florian's episode, which was episode 67, who spoke candidly about just that from her own personal experience.
So ultimately, there's a lot of planning needed, isn't there, I think, to have a successful retirement?
Yeah, there is. It doesn't need to be too onerous. In fact, I'm planning on sharing these insights in a more digestible format sometime in the not too distant future. So that could be a quick way to check that you've got everything in place for a successful retirement. For me, ultimately, it's about not feeling overwhelmed about the next stage of life, but seeing what will hopefully be unexpected extra years as a huge opportunity. From my experience and that of the dozens of podcast guests I've drawn insight from, living with purpose, looking after yourself, and planning ahead is what can result in a truly fulfilling later life.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we will put links to all of the episodes we've referenced today in the show notes, which you can find on our website or your preferred podcast player and on YouTube if you're watching there.
Thank you, Kathy, for helping me explain lessons from 4 years of podcasting and what makes for a successful retirement. I do hope you found our conversation helpful. If you have any questions, if they've popped up for you as you've listened or you've watched, or if you'd like a second opinion on your own retirement plan, please don't hesitate to get in touch and I'll do my best to answer your questions. You can reach me on email at hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk, or you can find me on Twitter at JustinKingCFP. As always, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help more people just like you find us. And of course, you can share this episode if you wished with someone you feel who will benefit. It really does help us. Until next time, I'm Justin King and
Kathy King,
helping you feel more informed in your retirement.